Hello, welcome to the Remarkable Podcast. I am your host, Doug Ford, and I am so excited to bring to you this episode today. Kristen Beneteau is a Niagara-based realtor with eXp Realty and has so much insight to bring to the table. I think you will really benefit from what she has to say, so enjoy the episode. Welcome, Kristen Beneteau, to the Remarkable Podcast and Remarkable Nation. I hope you'll tune into this and really give her a great listen because she has a lot to offer. So, Kristen, let's jump right into it. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on today, Doug. This is really great. So I'm a Niagara-based real estate agent, and I've been in the real estate industry for about 4 years. Before I got into real estate, I was working at Canadian Blood Services for a decade, and I spent a lot of time ensuring that we had enough blood for the blood supply in our communities. So I worked a lot with like community partners, and I was in like a sales role at that in that capacity. So it was really about like relationship building. And back in 2017, my husband and I decided to buy our first rental property. And I found out very quickly that I really enjoyed that relationship building with tenants and finding tenants for our properties, which quickly snowballed into me getting my real estate license. And I'll have to credit my husband for pushing me into that, because at the time he was like, oh, you would be really good at this. And I just kept thinking, oh, this is such a saturated market. Everyone's a realtor. Am I really going to be able to break through? And he just kept saying, you're going to bring something different to the table. I see how you are with our tenants. I see how you are at work with, building relationships with your community. This is a no-brainer. So
That's
so I've been doing it
amazing
for about 4
how
years now.
people in our lives tend to often be the sort of catalyst to get us rolling. Like, you have this idea, maybe I'll do this. And then once someone who knows you comes along and says, yeah, you should do that. All of a sudden it's like the permission slip has been granted or something like that.
100%. Yes, 100%. And sometimes you don't see it in yourself, right? Like I felt like it just came so natural to me to build relationships and to find tenants and continue those relationships, that I didn't realize I was doing it. He saw something externally that I just felt came so natural. So yeah, so that's really how I got into the industry.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. So when you got started, I mean, that makes a lot of sense that you were, um, you know, looking for tenants and working with providing a housing solution, to say the least.
Mhm.
Um, how did you transition from your work at Canadian Blood Services to being a full-time realtor? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was slow and steady, to be honest. I didn't pull the trigger right away. And I was nervous. It was a slow growth. I did just under 10 transactions my first year, which was a great first year. And every year since, I've continued to double my business. But in my third year is when I ended up leaving Canadian Blood Services. And to be perfectly honest, I should have left a year prior. I was burning the candle at both ends, doing my full-time job during the day and then real estate at night and the weekends. I also had two young kids at the time, and it was a lot. In my third year, I grossed the highest amount that I had, like that I have, and I
Right.
said, okay, this is the time. I was no longer scared to make that leap. And it was definitely the best decision I ever made. But again, credit goes to my husband and my supportive family, who really encouraged me to just rip off that band-aid and make the jump. And truly, I think that again, I needed that support. I needed to hear that, this was the right path.
Yeah, maybe especially as a mom, right? Because I mean, that's some serious mom power, but
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
I think a lot of moms have this huge sense of responsibility and trying to do everything for everybody. And that's, yeah, it's a hard decision to make when you have to start to sever up your time for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the blessings was my mom ended up moving in with us. And that was really helpful because I ended up having that extra support during that year. And then I felt, okay, now I'm ready to finally make that leap And like I said, it was, long overdue, but I'm glad that I did, because then I was able to put all my focus in on my business. Yeah, and being a mom, like, I want to be there for my kids and not just be working 24/7. So
Of course.
yeah, but it's been
And
really
that is the danger with real estate when, I mean, your clients are accessible to you via a cell phone and that,
that's it.
what are the boundaries?
That's it. And,
Yeah.
it took me a while to get to that point too. My first few years, I was at
Mhm.
the beck and call, and I'm still like that because I like to communicate frequently with my clients. I don't like to leave them hanging, but now I understand that some things are not as urgent as others, and that,
Right.
some text messages can wait or some emails I can get to tomorrow. Um,
Great.
yeah, but it took me a little bit of time to learn that. And now
Mhm.
that I have those boundaries set, it is a little bit more manageable.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to a question I wanted to ask you because I've heard you talk about the concept of relationships multiple ways, even like you've referred to relationships with tenants, you referred to relationships with clients, you referred to relationships in your former business, you referred to the relationships around you.
Hmm.
Obviously, you think that relationships are like a key part of your business, but can you talk a little bit about your philosophy behind that? Like, how could you teach someone to have that kind of, for lack of a better word, like superpower towards relationships that I think you have?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think relationships are really the foundation of business, right? What's the saying? It's your network is your net worth. And how you speak to people, how you show up for people really matters. In my first year of business, I did a lot of personal and professional development. So I would read a lot, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, um, learned about myself, went to therapy, like really trying to do the inner work so that I can show up as the best version of myself for others. And really learning to like listen, asking the right questions, listening with intention, and understanding people's needs, so that I can service them the best. And really, to teach somebody that, I would think you would have to really do that inner work first.
Mhm.
And then also building those relationships is really important. Like I started with reaching out to my sphere, my friends and family for business initially. Um, and I'm very grateful because I have a strong community. Like I play sports. I'm very involved in several boards. Like I'm a board of director on two boards right now. But I really get myself out there. And that was hard for me because before I got into real estate, I had a very small friend group. I had a very small network. And my goal was to grow the amount of people that I knew in my community. That was all I wanted to do. I wanted to just meet as
Fantastic.
many people as I can. And I still feel that way. I still feel
Mhm.
like I don't know enough people.
Right.
And I want to keep growing that network. And I love when I meet people that are like minded and we're just like jiving. It's one of the
Mhm.
best feelings. Um, and I feel like I can connect very easily to those people when I meet them at open houses or when I'm, just meeting people at like, community events.
Totally.
It just becomes natural. I want to know their story. I want to know how they got to where they are. What are their pain points? How can I help them achieve their real estate goals? That's what's really important at the end of the day. It's relationships.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great way of looking at it. And do you have a resource that you could recommend? Because it sounds like you said you read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts.
For
I
sure.
mean, I'm not asking you to give out the name of your therapist, but
She's great.
was there something that like you remember that we could share that people could look up and
Yes, yeah. So, books for sure. Read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is one of my favorite books.
that's a good one.
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's an amazing book. Highly recommend. Never Split the Difference. It really, that book spoke to me a lot about how to negotiate with people, but not in the sense of like a power struggle or trying to get what you want, but how to understand people's perspectives so that you can, help them achieve what their goals are. So it's really looking like it's an empathetic or empathic way of dealing with, or talking to people, right? So those three
Right.
books definitely resonated with me the most. Um, some influencers that I followed too, like Brian Buffini. He's like a huge real estate guru, and he was somebody that I've based my entire business off of. And also just locally, like there's some local agents that I admire and I follow and I listen to, and they have guided me. Like finding the right mentors matters.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, I find like just throwing on headphones while I'm getting ready in the morning and listening to a book, or sometimes I have a half an hour drive to Fort Erie. I'm like, yeah, like, I'm going to listen to something today outside of just jam into music, which I do sometimes too. But I feel like, I find those little moments because it's hard, right? When you have
Yep.
kids and sports and a life, it's
Yeah,
hard to
totally,
digest
right?
the information. But I think, like, again, you have to do the work so that you can become the best version of yourself. And it's an ongoing process. It's all about growth and development and learning. I feel like the mountain keeps getting bigger every time I think I'm like, oh, I'm accomplishing this one, task or skill. And then I feel like there's just so much more to do. And I
Well, it's
think,
like gold mine.
yeah,
In some ways, it's kind of like you go deeper in yourself and you find, oh, well, there's a treasure, but if it looks like if I go even farther, there might be something else there too. So
yeah,
very
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you think about when you first got started, have you observed anything in your business that you thought, I need to stop doing that and start doing this other thing? Like made any kind of major shift or even a minor shift that had a big influence on your business? Is there something that sticks out to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Not necessarily in like a negative way. I think I started focusing on growing other agents, and I started mentoring last year, and it was one of the best things I could have done for my even just personal benefit, because I learned a lot while I was teaching. And that's one of my favorite things about training new mentees. I get to watch their growth, their development, but I'm also growing and developing next to them, and I learn from them because they ask these insightful questions sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. And I'm going to find out now. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Let
But
me get back to you, right?
yeah. So a big thing for me, and I didn't realize this getting into the business, was going to be teaching and training and mentoring. And I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. But taking that
Nice.
on has been an amazing venture. I trained two new agents last year, and I took on two new ones this year.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's great.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
I can that makes sense. I think you'd be excellent at, showing someone how to get started in the business and mentoring, and I can see why that would have such a positive impact on yourself. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, on a lighter note, are there any deals that you can look back on and think like, that was a funny moment, or that was super awkward, or
Oh God. Let me just get out my big book.
right? Yeah, just pick one or two.
Oh gosh. Well, it wasn't the deal that you and I did together 3 years ago because that was very smooth. That was a good transaction.
Nice.
But
I told you my side. It wasn't as simple.
well, that's the thing, right? Like we have so many deals that, can go sideways, or even just people that we meet along the way where we think, it's going to go one way and then it goes the other. Um, geez, I'm trying to think like my very, very first deal is not my favorite one. I'll be honest. Like my very first transaction, it wasn't with somebody I knew. It was I was showing a property one day to somebody that was within my sphere, and I met the next door neighbor, and she said, I want to sell my house, and I said, well, I'm happy to help, and that was one of my first sales. But I didn't realize this is so bad. I think she was an alcoholic. And
Okay.
during the day, we actually ended up getting 5 offers on her property. And when I went to go present them to her, she poured this huge glass of wine, like right to the brim, and chugged it all back before I started presenting. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so awkward. Like, I didn't know at the time, like, that this could happen. And I
Yeah.
didn't know how to approach it. So that was a very awkward one for me. And I learned a lot about people and deals through that. Uh,
What you mean?
yeah, I mean, there's definitely been some other bumps and bruises along the way, but I always
Mhm.
find that those are sometimes the best ones because you learn so much throughout. It sucks at the time. Those are
Right.
always the worst feelings. You're like, oh, did
Hmm.
I approach that right? Did I know what to say? Did I prep it properly, because a lot of it is about expectations for people too. Um,
Yes.
Setting expectations, and I think that there were moments where I could have done better, but having that opportunity to reflect back and say, okay, I know what to do better next time.
Yeah, that's great. Now that brings up an interesting thought. How do you set reasonable expectations when you are sort of onboarding a new client?
Yeah, it's all about educating clients, absolutely, going through the market with a fine tooth comb, showing them the data, showing them the comps, making sure that they understand where they sit, where their asset sits in in the market, to prepare
Mhm.
them so that they understand, this is likely what the responses that we're going to get. These are pain points that buyers are looking at. Um, and I think that that's usually when I get like the best results with my clients, is when I take that
Yes.
time and sit with them. I have a listing presentation that I go through with every client to ensure that they know my methods, how I operate, and what they can expect from me in terms of service, communication, and essentially helping them reach their goals, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think client expectations and setting those expectations at the front helps the transaction just go a lot smoother.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you do your listing presentation with paper on an iPad?
I
What
have
do
an
you do?
iPad. Yeah, I bring my
Mhm.
iPad, so it's all digital. But I find it depends on the client. Some clients really like looking at data, and some don't. Everyone has a different way of, experiencing the transaction. And sometimes I bring paperwork. If it's an
Mhm.
older client and they want to see, data on paper, then I'll bring that for
Yep.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's different, but
I think it's one of the industries where we don't totally get to walk away from paper.
we don't. We actually don't. I
No.
thought we would just go completely digital. And I've driven, half an hour one way, 3, 4 times a day just to get signatures and initials from an older couple that won't do DocuSign, right? Like I still have
Right.
to do that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's totally true. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Is there something that you think, because I actually enjoy your Instagram account from a real estate point of view. It seems, in my mind, to have a nice balance of being about real estate and houses, but then also showing a little bit of who you are. Is there is there philosophy behind that? Is there like what's your you must bring some strategy to it.
Yeah, well, of course. And I'm going to be honest, Doug, I don't like social media. I don't know a lot of realtors that do. It's kind of a pain point for me. And it feels like a business in itself because, you have to be relevant, you have to be on those platforms. So I do my best to kind of show who I am and to show the authentic version of me in my community. I want people to feel like they can relate to me. I've often heard that from other clients too, where they're like, I just haven't met, like, it's refreshing to meet you because you don't seem like you're just about business. Like, I can be human too. And I do have, I have kids, I have a family. I don't shy away from sharing that with people. And I am who I am. So I'm going to put that out there. I've been a little bit more cautious lately just because I do have kids. I have a lot more followers than I did when I first started. So I
Right.
watch what I post when it comes to family stuff or personal things. But I do want people to know who I am. So I think it's really
Yeah,
important
cool.
to strike that balance.
All right. Well, from my end, is there anything else you want to bring to this conversation particularly? Because on my end, I feel like you've just added so much value. I want to, I sort of want to bring that circle to a close. But is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thanks. Well, thank you for having me here today. I would just want to add, like, if there's anybody who's thinking about getting into real estate, like perhaps you're considering getting your license or you're maybe new in the business, just I would really encourage you to think about it in a way that is not just about money, and to think about it as like professional and personal growth and business building and really putting your clients first above all else. And find a good mentor, and people can reach out to me anytime. I'm an open book. I love mentoring and training or even just providing advice. So if anyone wanted to reach out to me directly, I'm happy to answer their questions.
And what's the best way for somebody to do that?
Yeah, any method, really. I'm a realtor. You
Yeah.
can find my number
Right.
anywhere.
You can't find the
Yeah.
realtor, you're not
So
doing your
put the
job.
bat signal up and I'll call.
Yeah.
Yeah, Instagram is a great tool, of course. I'll get back to my DMs, but my phone number is online, realtor.ca, email, Facebook. Yeah, yeah.
And what's your Instagram handle? I'll put it in the notes as well, but just so that people can hear it.
Oh my God, you're putting me on the spot. I think it's Kristen Beneteau Realtor. I think that's all
Okay,
it is.
perfect. Really original. Like mine's Doug
Right?
Ford
I
Realty.
know.
That's how it goes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience your journey and just some really great tips. So I appreciate that. And thank you, Kristen, for this time you spent with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Doug. It was great.